And welcome back to the OHIO podcast, everybody. As you can see, I'm joined by my special guest, Brian Oberst. Brian, welcome to the OHIO podcast, my man.
Thank you for having me, Eric.
Brian, this has been a long time coming because I think out of everybody I've interviewed, you might be the oldest, as far as not oldest, but longest a listener of our podcast. I think out of everybody I've interviewed so far.
Yeah, I've
Do you?
listened to you on the radio and
Yeah,
talked a few times. I think I talked to you guys once before we were on the radio. And but yeah, it's I've been with you guys for the long haul. It's been great. Enjoyed
yeah.
watching your guys' show grow and I know I don't always get on here and watch a lot of your live shows, but I always try to go back and watch them later when I get some time. But but it's been great. You guys are doing a great job. I love your guys' shows and
Thank you, Brian. We appreciate that, man. Yeah. So when we started 6 years ago, it was always exciting when we first got started when we would meet someone who was actually listening to the podcast, the audio version, and Brian was one of those fellas. And so it's awesome to have you on here, Brian. Brian, tell everybody a little bit about your fandom with Ohio State, how it got started, and maybe where it came from.
Uh, probably started really probably in the late 80s, early 90s when I really started getting into it. And my dad introduced me. Um, I used to watch games and stuff with him all the time. Um, we living in Marblehead, Ohio, didn't always get out to the games a whole lot then, but I do remember him taking me to my first Ohio State game back in 1993 when Washington Huskies came to town, and Washington was a fairly good team. And I think that's when I really started because I think the reason my dad took me was somebody gave him tickets, and I got to go. And one of my favorite players then was Joey Galloway, who
Hmm.
was starting to come up in the ranks, and didn't have necessarily have a great quarterback. Bobby Hoyne was the quarterback that year, but I mean, they had two beasts at running backs. They had Raymont Harris and Binoit, and they both went off for 100 yards for Harris, and Binote had 85. They both had a touchdown. But Galloway had 4 catches for 104 yards against that Washington defense that supposedly was the strength. And I think the Washington ended up finishing seven. They ended up finishing 7-4 that year. So I think Ohio State must have really exposed them a little bit. But that was my real first experience going to a game. Was back in 1993 with my dad, and it was great. And always enjoyed watching the games with my dad. And it's one of the things I kind of miss because my dad's not around anymore to watch the games with. And in fact, when you asked me you wanted to sit here and have this interview, the first person I kind of thought I needed to tell was my dad. I was like, oh, you're like, oh man, can't do that. But because I know he would have thought this was pretty cool, exciting to see if we get to kind of talk a little bit about Ohio State because it was something that he was always enjoyed. Uh, and I always
Yeah.
enjoyed that with him.
It's funny you bring that up, Brian, because I share some memories with my father as well surrounding Ohio State, and I remember when I was just a little guy. This is back in the '80s. My dad would always listen to 610 WTBN, which is the AM station here out of
Mm-hmm.
Columbus, and he would listen to Buckeye Talk on the radio in the evenings, and and I was just a little guy, but I remember that. And so when I started the podcast, it was neat to kind of do that again, especially with the call-in show,
Right.
because no one does that anymore hardly at all in sports radio, um, and so it's kind of neat because my dad watches me and watches the podcast, and like he did back when I was a kid with the radio, and so
Right.
it's kind of come full circle a
Yeah.
little bit. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you shared that story about your
Yeah.
father, man. And I think that's a lot of us Buckeye fans have that story, right? Where
Yeah.
someone in our family was a Buckeye fan and introduced us to it as kids, and
Hmm.
it was kind of just inherited. So
Yeah.
what's some of your favorite Buckeye memories, man?
Um, Probably I would say one of them was because we were watching it as a family. Was the national championship game against Miami, Florida. Um, I remember my dad was all excited. He got us the shirts or whatever for I don't know if he got them later or he got tried to get them. They were able to come out before. We had the shirts and we're sitting there. We got because they were playing the Fiesta Bowl.
Hmm.
He went and specifically got the Ohio State Tostito chip bags with the Ohio State
Yeah.
logo on there,
Yeah.
and we had got some different kinds of salsa, and we had some other stuff like that. We're just sitting there watching it together as a family, and it was just kind of neat and exciting to watch that game going back and forth. And he's like, going into it, my dad was always kind of interested to watch the game. He'd be like, well, even though we may not win this game, I'm still going to try to enjoy this game as much as I can because it'd be a once in a lifetime thing. I may never get to see him be here again. So I'm going to enjoy every moment, win or lose. And I just remember that game going back and forth. And when when we ended up winning that game, just the pure excitement and joy on my dad's face was
Yeah.
priceless.
Yeah. You know, that's you know, that's good, dude. That's interesting because I had a real good friend named Doug Gerald who's passed away. He passed away from sugar at a pretty young age. Um, and that year, 2002, I'm in college, and he was a former redcoat at the shoe.
Okay.
And so he's a about I think he was probably about 15, 20 years older than me, but he was my mentor at church, and he took me under his wing. And that year we watched every game together, every single game. And it all ended with that game at his house with a
Right.
big party, right?
Yeah.
But I remember that season, the Holy Buckeye game
Oh
is
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's a game I cherish for multiple reasons. It's my favorite game of all time as a Buckeye fan, because it was just him and me. We were the only two watching the game at his house, and how we celebrated like we won the national championship
Right.
in that
Yep.
game.
Yeah.
And I will never forget that. And I think that's one of the things that's really special about being a Buckeye fan, having watch parties and having friends
Mm-hmm.
and watching games together is sharing those moments and memories, making those memories with each other. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that, man.
Yeah.
So,
That was the last game. That was the last time because of course they my dad passed away in 2004, so he got to witness that one, and then 2003 was kind of a down year and disappointing year. But just to experience that with him will and that 93 game will just always will always be in my memory and always on my mind, and just think about just those times of seeing his expression on his face, and so
mhm.
that those will always be special. But yeah, that was
Yeah. Yeah, my dad didn't have a lot of watch parties. Like he watched the game by himself a lot. But I remember 96 Rose Bowl, so the 97 Rose Bowl, the
yep,
96
yep,
season. We had friends over the house. We had a watch party. And that night was the night I say that I was baptized as a Buckeye. It was that night. When I was like, this is pretty cool because I had never had a watch party before that.
right,
And we had gone to games, we'd gone to the
right,
shoe to watch my cousin Ryan play, but that was the first ever Buckeye watch party I was a
mm-hmm.
part of, and I was baptized. That I was there was no turning back after that,
Right,
man. I
right,
was I was
right.
full steam ahead, man. So, um, what about this year? What are you going to remember from this year's national championship team?
Just their will. I mean, I mean, you look. I mean, they played good all season, and they got to that Michigan game. It's like they got. I don't know if they just were what it was, but after that game, it just seemed like it was when they went in and played that first home game against Texas. It was just a different team than we watched a couple weeks before,
Hmm.
and a lot of it. I think that's what I'll remember most because they could have easily went to that game and just be like, "We're done." Didn't have the same momentum, but they came out with passion and fire, and you saw the leaders on the seniors, the ones just carrying this team. When somebody made a mistake or made a missed tackle, you could just see it on the sidelines. If you kind of watch closely, you can kind of see the seniors go over to him and be like, "Don't worry about it. Put it behind you. Forget it happened." Especially that when Trayvon Henderson made that bonehead play and the drive
Yep.
forward got that, you know, stupid penalty, which I get it. Somebody said something or whatever, but the motion got the best of him. And I think Ibuka is one that Ibuka actually, I guess, one of the ones that went over to him and said, "Don't worry about it. Make a play the next time you get the chance to get the ball." And he
Right.
reps off that big one, and it's just like the seniors. I think really rallied around not just the seniors, but they rallied around the juniors and sophomores and the freshmen. Said, "Don't worry, you make a mistake, go out there, make a play the next time around. And they, I think that was the thing that was exciting because, like I said, they could have just laid down
Mm-hmm.
and to be like went through the motions or be like, forget this, we're not even gonna go play anymore. We're gonna give up and not play. But they didn't. It's like they rallied around each other, and maybe it wasn't even just the seniors. We don't know what happened behind closed doors. Maybe it
Right.
was the juniors and sophomores or freshmen because they said this was a unique group of players. And if you remember, it started back in spring last year where they had that big church rally
Yeah.
where they were preaching to each other and baptizing each other, and a lot of the players found the Lord that day, and maybe that's where it started and how they were able to overcome a loss like that to Michigan. As heartbreaking it is, I think they rallied around each other, and freshmen weren't afraid to call it the seniors, and vice versa. The seniors weren't afraid to call anybody out. I think that's when it really started how much this passion this team had for each other. And I think that's what's exciting to see how it unfolded and how ESPN ended up embracing that. A lot of times, when you throw God, they start talking about God, and the team starts about God. The media will kind of turn away from that, but
Mm-hmm.
they kind of end up embracing how much passion and love they had for each other and for the Lord. So I think that was what kind of I think I'll remember the most about this team.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think ESPN, they give them credit, like you are, give them credit for embracing what was a major piece of what this team was, right?
Hmm.
Like Ryan Day kept saying, during the playoff run, like you have to finish this run in order for everybody to know your story, so you can tell your
Yep.
story.
Yep.
And I think a big aspect of that was what you just said, that the part of the story was how these players found the Lord in their lives at Ohio State, being a part of this team, how that through that this culture of it's okay to be a servant of Christ, and a football player at Ohio State kind of was born, and it was such a huge impact of who they were. And I agree with you 100%, Brian. I think that is how they overcame what was a devastating loss to your rival, and it devastated me. Like it's well documented how
Right.
devastated I
Right. Oh,
was.
I was
And if
devastated by it too. Because I
and if
mean,
yeah, if you and I
yeah,
are devastated, imagine how much they were
yeah.
devastated,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, you think about to think back to last year, towards the end of the way last year. G. Scott had that bonehead play, had a
Yep.
bonehead play, and everybody's like, "Oh, he's done. He's off this team. There's no way he'll come back." He was the ones that was part of the starting this religious movement they started on campus. Was one of the leaders, him and Trayvon, and I forget who some of the other ones were, but there was, I mean, G. Scott, one of the ones is like, you know what, I need to get back to where, you know, with the person I need to be, and I need to be it for this team.
Hmm.
I mean, because he could have very easily been like, my team's disappointed me in how I ended that season last year. Could have easily been one of those guys that walked away.
Sure.
And he's like, I'm a senior. I need to come back, and I need to be a leader, better leader for this team. And he's one of the ones that started that movement this off season, early in the spring, stuff like that. So I mean, it's guys like that that I think we're always gonna remember
Hmm.
going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up, Brian. Thank you, man. I appreciate that, dude. Um, yeah. So, what particular play is it the sack, scoop, and score?
Oh,
That
that's the one I think. That one, or if you want to talk defense, that probably me was. I mean, I was just like when he did. I was like, is he gonna take it all the way? No, he ain't gonna have the. But it's like I was like on the edge. It was like, oh yeah,
yeah,
that was awesome. But I think the offensive play of the game, really for me, that really stands out was right before the half against Texas, when Texas had all the momentum and Trayvon Henderson ripped off that 75-yarder. Um, those are the two plays I think in a different. I mean, we could sit here nitpick a lot of different plays, but I think those defensively, Jack Sawyer's strip sack and the big touchdown run on the screen pass to Trayvon Henderson were the ones that I think will remember because they both were turning points in the game that really turned the tides in the game.
yeah. What do you think of Ryan Day?
There was at times I think I think he's a great coach. And then there's other times when a game against like I don't know how he is again. I don't know what it is with him in Michigan. If it's sometimes he plays scared, like I mean, because we can say John Cooper was a great coach at Ohio State,
He
you
was
know,
actually.
and but it was always something about that game that he couldn't get that team fired up for that game. And I don't know if Ryan Day's got is just I don't know what it is. I don't know. I mean, there was times I was ready, like last year after we lost at Michigan, I was on that bandwagon that Ryan Day's got to go,
Hmm.
you know, and then it's like, and then he found a way to will him that, and it's like, okay, I'm willing to give him props for another year or two, but if he doesn't figure a way to beat Michigan, I don't care how many national championship guy has, that game is still important as just as any. So I guess I'm kind of, I don't know, kind of stuck in the middle.
You sound like Chris.
I know it's like it is. It's like weird. It's like I mean, I can praise him for all the great wins he has, but it's like
Right.
you got it. You got at some point. You got to win against Michigan. You've proven
Yeah.
that you can win a national championship. I think that was something that he had to prove to me as a fan. Uh, that you had to prove that you could win. You could win on the big stage, and he proved he could do that. Of course, we all know he got screwed in the against Georgia, and he
Yeah.
got screwed again, and he got screwed against Clemson.
Hmm.
We could say if those two games go different way, he may have be sitting on 3 national championships. Um, but would have, could have, should have. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give the man credit. He found a way to win us a national championship. Now go out and show us that you can beat Michigan.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Chris says that he says Ryan Day's a really good coach, but he won't call him elite until he has a winning record against the team up north.
Well, I agree with that. I agree with that. I mean, a lot of people will say John Cooper was a great coach, but he was an elite coach because of his record against Michigan.
Yeah, and one of the biggest difference between Ryan Day and John Cooper, however, is Ryan Day's record in the postseason is actually really good.
Well, yeah, his postseason records. I mean, we can't deny that. I mean,
Right.
but I mean, you still got. I mean, when it comes down to it, as you know, I don't know. I just listened today to Sean Schrock's interview with Ben Harsock, and Ben Harsock says that game is just as important as he goes. I don't care if I don't win any other. Basically, saying if I don't win any other game my entire season, if I don't beat Michigan, the season's a loss, and that's the way the players feel. And if you can't get your coach on board with that, or I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just you have a, especially when you come out and you were mad, you got on them. Was it when Michigan forfeited that one season against us? You said he's glad we didn't play him. We would score 100 points on him. And then you went out the next year when you did play him. You didn't
Yeah.
even basically didn't even show up.
Yeah. So you brought up Sean. You and a lot of people who are going to watch this know who Sean is because
Yeah,
he's the moderator in the chat for us, and he's over on the Buckeye Boys as a host. You and Sean grew up together, didn't you?
yeah. We went to the same high school together and played football together for 3 years. I didn't play my senior year, but we played together and actually became better friends. I think after we got out of college, after we got out of high school, we kind of lost touch a little bit. Then we got into college, and we just kind of reconnected again on Facebook, and just enjoy talking with each other again and talk about the past. But yeah, we played football together, went to high school together, and grew up together in the same um, town, Marblehead, Ohio, and
Yeah.
so.
Are you still there in Marblehead, or are you?
No,
Yeah.
I live in Columbus now.
I thought so. Yeah, but
Yeah, I live in.
Sean's still up there though.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's still in Marblehead, and but yeah, I haven't been back to Marblehead in a long time.
What's it like growing up on the lake at Marblehead, man?
It's great. It's actually pretty cool. I mean, of course, you always sometimes you get the lake effect. You get the lake effect, snow or be really cold and stuff like that. But it was always pretty fun. I always enjoyed living that close to the lake, and I miss it at times. But there's also times too where it's like I like where I'm at. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't like the winters, I don't think, in
No,
Marblehead.
the winters are pretty brutal because I mean, like I said, you get that wind going across the lake. It can
Yeah.
be it can feel a lot colder than what it really is. And
Yeah. And then
but
the other thing that would bug me is the mayflies.
oh yeah, they get tons of mayflies down
Yeah,
through there. Yeah, oh yeah,
and if you don't know what we're talking about, look it up, folks. It's
it can be
unique.
brutal. Yes,
It,
it can be brutal.
it doesn't last long, but when
No,
it
they
hits,
don't. Well, the thing is that it's actually, when they hit, there's a lot of them, but it's actually worse when you have to clean them up because
yeah,
like it's a pain in the butt to clean them up.
it's like locusts.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah,
yep.
I was actually on Kelly's Island when the
Oh my,
mayflies showed up one time.
oh yeah,
Oh, you're on an island. There's nowhere to go.
right,
Oh,
right,
it was
yeah,
terrible. Like it
yeah,
was I was
yeah.
like I will never go back until after they come and go.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
but anyways, that's neither here nor there. So we talked a little bit about Ryan Day. What do you think about the coaching changes he's made?
I think he's made some good coaching changes. I really do. I think bringing in Patricia, who has another guy that has experience winning at the big stage, championship level, and maybe he can be the guy that helps improve this offensive line. Some guy that's going to come in there and do that. Um, I really think he did a good job. I mean, he has some tough shoes to fill, obviously, um, but I think he brought the right guys in. I don't see any issues with the offensive line. I think finally giving Hartline his diligence to be offensive coordinator is a good move. Kind of give him a chance to improve his stock as a future head coach, whether it's here or if it's somewhere else. Um, I think he's uh, earned his spot to get a chance to call plays, and hopefully Ryan Day will take the reins off and not try to, you know, still try to put the training wheels on him. But I think Ryan Hartline has the knowledge to know that if he still has any questions, he can ask Ryan Day. I think they got that good relationship. Otherwise, I don't think Ryan Day would have put his trust in him to give him the job if he didn't have a good relationship with him.
Right.
I think if he didn't offer Brian Hartline's job this time around, I think Hartline was gone. I don't think
I
Hartline
agree
was
with
going to
that.
stay.
I agree with that. I agree. I noticed you're wearing Eddie George's jersey there.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, speaking of new uh, head coaches in college football, going from Tennessee State to Bowling Green, what's your thoughts on Eddie George moving to the MAC?
I think it's a great move. I like to see what he can do there. It's good to see him kind of get recognized for what he did at Tennessee State, because he turned that program around, and Bowling Green has kind of been an utter mess for a while. Um, and I think it's also interesting too is how he got the job. Like, the Bowling Green athletic director obviously put a bug in Urban Meyer's ear, said,
Yeah,
who should I hire? And Urban Meyer said, hands down, you need to interview Eddie George. He's probably the best candidate for the job. And it's interesting because, like, they must have some kind of relationship in some way, even though they never really probably crossed paths. Unless, I don't know if Urban Meyer was the graduate assistant when Eddie George was there or not. I have to go back and look
I
at it.
don't. No, I don't think so.
So it's interesting. I don't know if Eddie George just happened to be around there sometimes and grew a relationship with Urban Meyer in some way, or but because it's interesting because, like, obviously for Urban Meyer to give high praise to a coach, even if he has never coached him before, must say a lot about his reputation, his personality, his coaching ability, his way to interact with young kids. And Eddie George has always been able to do that. I kind of feel like he's always kind of had a little bit of a connection with some former Buckeye players here in the past, even maybe when Urban Meyer was here, or just that grows that relationship. And I think it's great. I really do, and I'm right. Where Eddie George goes after that, after he goes to Bowling Green, but at least he's getting himself another chance to go to a different type of a school where he can kind of compete, and I'm excited for him. And I have a kind of like my cousin. He lives in Bowling Green, and he's all excited about it. And he every once in a while gets to go to some Bowling Green games, and he's excited to see what Eddie George does there. And I think it's like you were saying. I think it was on one of your other, might have been your show yesterday that I actually watched today, where you said you're kind of a Bowling Green fan
Yeah.
now, and I think it'll be interesting to kind of maybe kind of watch Bowling Green a little bit more just because of Eddie George and what he can do.
Yeah, I'm making no apologies about it. Like Bowling Green just became my second favorite team in college football. Straight up.
Well, yeah, I could agree with that.
I mean, I have no allegiance to any other MAC schools. I didn't go to any of the
No,
MAC schools.
no, either did I.
I went to Ohio State, so it's like I'm a Buckeye. So if I'm gonna watch if I'm gonna watch a MAC game, it's gonna be Bowling Green now. I'm definitely rooting for them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. I think you brought up Urban Meyer. Let's talk Urban Meyer. What's your opinion of Urban Meyer as a Buckeye fan?
I've always loved Urban Meyer. I think it was I was glad when he came back to Ohio State and was able to get this program back on track after things fell through with Jim Tressel because we didn't know who was going to be the coach then. And not that I don't think Luke Fickell should have think he maybe should have got another year or maybe felt like he was wrong he didn't. But bringing Urban Meyer, I think changed this team. I
Hmm.
think it brought us it kind of caught us up with the times where everybody was going more of a spread type thing, brought that Florida atmosphere with them, and Urban Meyer's track record obviously was phenomenal. I mean, he went. I don't know if he was at somewhere before Bowling Green, if Bowling Green was his first job. Then he went to like
He was,
Utah. He went
yeah,
to Utah after Bowling Green
he was a wide receiver coach at
at
Notre
Notre Dame.
Dame.
Yeah, and then
Hmm.
went to Bowling Green, then went to Utah, and then went to Florida. So I always loved Urban Meyer. I've always been a big fan of Urban Meyer, and he kept that narrative going that Jim Tressel carried with him about we're going to beat that team up north. We're going to make it a priority to beat them every year, and we wasn't going to take a loss at all. We played with passion and desire. I always loved Urban. I also think he was done wrong by Gene Smith.
Hmm.
I mean, Gene Smith hung out Jim Tressel and hung out Urban Meyer to dry because he was trying to save his own skin. And I always feel like Urban Meyer was pushed out of Ohio State. I think Urban Meyer would have probably coached maybe 1 or 2 more years at Ohio State. But I think he felt like he was pushed out, and that's why he left. And I was always on board too if they ever wanted to bring Urban Meyer back as a head coach or athletic director. But I just think he probably just likes what he's doing now, just wants to take a back seat and still want to try to help Ryan Day or help Brian Hartline. Or I think he's still influencing a lot of our coaches in trying to give them advice. And obviously, he's doing it with former players. And I was always been respectful and Urban Meyer's always been a great leader and mentor to a lot of coaches that he's worked with and a lot of former players. I think he's helping them get on the right track of getting the coaching that if they want to get in coaching. And I think so. I've always had high regard for Urban Meyer.
Yeah. Uh, I think Urban Meyer's competitive nature is so I use the word toxic. I say and maybe that's not the right word in this context. He is so addicted to the win that losing becomes toxic.
Oh yeah, I could see that. Yeah, when he
Yeah.
loses, it really affects him. And I think it's one of those things where there. You remember when he came when he before he came to Ohio State, his daughters, his daughter and his son. I don't know if it was one, it was his kids basically. I don't know which ones were, but they said, "Dad, we'll let you go back to coaching, but if it becomes too much where your health becomes a big factor again, you need to step away." Because I think they were worried about his health because it's his competitive nature where he doesn't like losing and he takes it to heart and it takes a toll on his health.
Yeah, it's fascinating actually. It's very
Well,
interesting.
Lou Holtz was the same way. I mean, as much as we don't like Lou Holtz. I mean, I'm not a Lou Holtz fan. Never really been a fan, especially of late when he calls out Ryan Day and the Buckeye stuff like that. But like, it was the same way for him. It became his health after every time he would lose, his health was the same way. His health became it became a toxic. It became too much for him. And I think he coached a lot longer than he probably should have because
Hmm.
his health took a downfall, and you still can see it to this day. He is not a healthy. I'm surprised you still see him around because you could just tell he's not healthy, and
Right.
it does take a toll on you. And I think that's why Nick Saban got when he did. I think he was worried about his. He's like, you know what, my health is more important, and then these losses were getting to him as well. I think and so these coaches, I think they don't realize that your health is more important. If your health becomes too much of a issue every time you lose, it's time to take a back seat and just step away, do something else, find your way still to be involved in college football, whether it
Hmm.
is as a broadcaster, as a mentor to some young coaches, and you can still do that and still be part of the game.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, and I think that's one of the things that you have to acknowledge that Ryan Day does really well, even though we don't like the fact that he lost to the team up north, like how he responded to that loss and to the pushback from Buckeye Nation is very admirable. And I think his cognizance of mental health and what that does to a human being and how he's an advocate for fighting for people for their mental health, I think actually helps him with that very thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so very, very interesting. Something that maybe we need to explore on the podcast down the road. What's your expectations of this year's team? We lost 8 guys, 8 starters on defense, 5 or 6 on offense, depending on how you want to look at the offensive line. What's your expectations of the 2025 Buckeyes this year?
I think they have the potential to repeat. I really do. I think they can do it. If the quarterback play can show us something, the quarterback's going to have plenty of weapons still,
Hmm.
especially on at the receiver position. They got a couple more guys in. You got Tate, more experienced. You got Jeremiah Smith is going to have uh, his second season. He'll have a full year on his belt to build on, and we can't forget about Brandon Ennis. You know, he's still going to be that third guy that's going to see a lot of. He can rely on him as a security blanket. Remember we go back and we look at some of these great wide receivers at Ohio State. Sometimes it wasn't always the standout ones that were the security blanket. Like Chris Olave's first couple of years, he was the security blanket,
Yeah, he
or
was.
Abuka. I mean, a lot of times this year alone, Abuka was like, if Howard need a play, where's Abuka at? If
Hmm.
they're shutting down Jeremiah Smith, where's Abuka at? And even going back to the way Urban Meyer utilized his wide receivers, where with like Austin Mack and some kind of forgotten guys. Those guys sometimes were rely on your other receivers. Don't feel like you have to, as a young quarterback, don't feel like you have to force the ball to your big playmakers.
Hmm.
Find a way to get those other guys involved. Your playmakers will get open and make their plays. So I kind of expect big things, probably because he's get whoever. Assuming it's going to be Justin Sane, because the way they've been talking and everybody kind of a lot of former players just been that are leaving just are praising just or Julian saying about how posy how experienced he even looks as a freshman and how much he makes plays. If he can look past try to look for his playmakers and get them involved. The thing that I have kind of wonder about is because I don't think we kind of saw where our depth really is, and that's at the running back position. Because I don't know if we have like that home run hitter like we did with Trayvon Henderson or the power like we had with Junkins. I mean, we saw flashes of people's, and from what I hear about this Donaldson, is it C.J. Donaldson, the guy from West Virginia? Is that his name?
Yes.
That at times he goes down too easily when he gets hit. If he can beef himself up, they say he's explosive, but he sometimes is afraid to take a hit. If he can get him beefed up and get him past that, and but I think our offensive line is going to be much better. I think they proved down the stretch that they were a better offensive line than what they showed at the end of last
Mm-hmm.
season. And if they can carry that momentum with them into this offseason or into the upcoming season, there's no reason why we won't have a very explosive offense. I'm not worried about our defense because I think we got to see a lot what our backups can do. I mean, we got some pretty good, strong guys on that second string, second defensive line that came in, stepped in last year. A lot of times for Sawyer when they had a breather, when JT went down, I think the defensive line is going to be phenomenal, and I think it's a good move to move CJ Hicks to the defensive end. I think that will show his how more aggressive he can be. I think that's what his natural position probably will be, and I think we'll see what he. I think we'll see him grow more at that position. We're going to get a more experienced Sonny Styles playing a second year. I mean, we figure for his first year linebacker, he didn't do too bad. He
Mm-mm.
played pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. No, those are all really good points. Looking over the schedule this year, there's really four games that I've highlighted as games that the season's going to kind of hinge on. The first one, the home game against Texas at home. Then you have an away game at Illinois, which I think is a sneaky difficult game.
Yeah, sneaky game. Yeah.
Illinois is returning like the most talent in the Big Ten, believe it or not, and they beat South Carolina in their bowl game. And South Carolina, a lot of SEC fans thought deserved to be in the playoffs. So Illinois is going to
Yeah.
be a very good team. It's at Champaign, Illinois. You've got Penn.
Which is weird. We always struggle in Champaign, Illinois.
It's a tough place to play. It seems like no matter what, every time we go there, it's windy and cold and rainy. Like that's every time. Um, we got Penn State at home. Penn State is expected to be the best team in the Big Ten. They have a lot of those seniors returning that could have went to the NFL. Drew Aller is going to be a senior this year. So a lot of people think that that could be a trouble game for the Buckeyes. And of course, we return to Ann Arbor, hopefully to avenge the last couple seasons against the Loserines. Looking at those four games, which one do you think? Maybe just rank them for me from most difficult to least difficult.
I think Illinois, probably because it is Champaign, Illinois, because we always struggle with Illinois in Illinois. You know, kind of going back and look at it, we've had a lot of we've lost a couple. We had some ones that shouldn't have been even close, but were close. So I'll rank that one as number one as the toughest. I'll rank Michigan as number two just because Ryan Day hasn't proven anything that he can beat that team yet. Regardless of what happens to Michigan, let's just play devil's advocate that they get a ban and they're not postseason eligible this year, and that may be the one game they highlight. And they're like, if we don't win any game at all, we're going to win. We're going to do everything in our power to win
Yeah,
this game.
it's true. That's true.
So I'll rank that one as two. I'll rank Texas as three, just because it's Texas, but we don't know what Archie Manning's going to do. Is he as good as advertised? I mean, he's shown flashes, but how much does Texas have coming back? Texas lost quite a bit, if I'm not mistaken. I think they lose some key players,
Oh yeah, they're expected to have quite a few guys drafted as well.
and then I'll rank Penn State because James Franklin always finds a way to poop his pants. We allowed to say poop on the air.
As we like to say, James Franklin's gonna James Franklin himself.
Yeah, right. I mean, he hasn't proven that he can win a big game.
No, and I'm sorry, Penn State fans, you don't get to claim beating Boise State and who else did they beat? It was who did they beat? It was they beat
Trying to remember.
I forget who they beat in the first round because they beat Boise State in the second round. But
Yeah.
they beat somebody in the first round. It was like, what, you gotta be kidding me,
Oh,
right? Like,
it was oh shoot, who was it? I'm drawing a blank now. I can't remember
I
offhand.
can't remember either. It'll come to me. But then they play Notre Dame, and they literally they had the lead. They had the game won, and James Franklin goes out there and just James Franklin's himself. SMU.
Oh yeah,
It was
SMU,
it
yeah,
was
yep,
SMU, and
yeah.
they destroyed them at
They
home.
destroyed them, yeah.
Yeah, SMU came up to the north and didn't had never played football in cold weather before,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they did not want to be there. You could tell
Right.
they were
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so sorry. I mean, James, I don't think you can count either one of those playoff wins as big games for James. You're expected to
No,
win those games, man.
you can't.
And
You
then you
can't.
got Oregon over here going, "Excuse me, we won the Big Ten, and that's who you get to play, and we got Ohio State coming in." Like,
Yeah,
goodness
yeah.
sakes. Yeah, but I digress. I have a theory. I want to get your take on my theory.
Okay, okay.
My theory is that in the next decade, starting last year, so we're in year number two of the 10 of what I'm calling the 10-year East-West war. Ohio State's next big rivalry is actually Oregon. I think in the 10-year span, in the first 10 years of the Ducks being in the Big Ten, I think Ohio State and Oregon are going to battle back and forth. And so far, my theory has been made to be true. If you take last year's 32-31
Hmm.
loss and then the revenge game in the Rose Bowl, however, the Ducks win the Big Ten in the first year that they're here. What do you think of my theory? Do you think Oregon's actually Ohio State's biggest rivalry in the Big Ten as far as success?
Yeah, I would say so. I would agree with that. I mean, Oregon definitely, I think, has shown that they can be Ohio State's. Because look how close. I mean, look how what they. It seems like right now they can tell they hate each other. Like, I mean, you're already starting to feel that hate, and you know, we've played Oregon before in the past before this, and like they. I mean, I think it even goes back. Even I mean, you can even go back further when we destroyed them when Oregon thought they were the better team back when they had Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, in the national championship
And
game.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, I think that's when it started for Oregon and Ohio State. I think that's when the rivalry started because if you remember correctly, Oregon was talking a lot of smack then. Said, we're the best team. There was nobody. Look what we did all season. We destroyed everybody we played. Ohio State's got no chance against us. We got the Heisman quarterback and Marcus Mariota. You know, Ohio State's not that. They were talking smack, and even after we beat them, we lost to them this year, and their coach was was talking smack even then, even now. He's like, "Oh, we're better. We'll play Ohio State again. We'll beat them. We beat them before. We can beat them again." Blah blah. So I think it's already started just by Dan Lanning making rumblings about it to start. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, I think it will become, especially if things really go south for Michigan and they have nothing to play for and aren't able to get recruits to come there. They have a ban, and Oregon continues to find a way to get these transfers guys in. And can you imagine? I don't think it's going to happen. Just think of how much of a rival it's going to become if somehow they steal Chris Henry from Ohio State.
yeah. I just did a video on that this morning. Yeah,
So I don't think he's going to go there, but can you imagine
I
the?
think it's a 50-50 shot that he flips there. I really do. I think that Oregon. It depends on what Chris Henry wants, right? If
Mhm,
Chris Henry's all about NIL, he's gonna go there. If
yeah,
Chris Henry's about development and being a part of a winning culture and wanting to be a Buckeye, he's going to be a Buckeye.
right.
So it depends on what he wants. But yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think that I'm glad that you give me confirmation on my theory.
Well, no, I think it's been. I think crazy thing is, I think it's been brewing for a while. And
Yeah.
I think it really came. And I think it really came when they came to the Big Ten. Oregon. You remember Oregon when they came in here, they thought they was a good. They think it's going to be. They thought it was going to be a cakewalk. They looked at the Big Ten as weak. It's like there's not many. They only looked at it as three good teams in the Big Ten: Ohio State, that team up north, and Penn State. And they thought everybody else was weak. And the simple thing is, Illinois, like you said, if Illinois can find a way to turn the program around, or even Wisconsin, those two teams, if they can get back on track where they were, those two teams sometimes always find a way to win games to knock off some of the Big Tens in the Big Ten. They just got to get back to those winning ways, and or even Iowa. If Iowa, Iowa at times can sneak up on you. So I think
I
Oregon's becoming. I think Oregon's become the biggest nemesis for everybody in the Big Ten, just because of the way they've been talking smack since they got here.
Let me give you, since you're talking Big Ten West, let me give you this question: Is Nebraska a sleeping giant, or is that blue blood dead and they're never
I
coming back?
I think they're pretty much dead in the water.
Oh, that's too bad.
That's what I think personally, but I mean they could. I mean they got to probably figured out the head coaching spot. I feel like they have really. I think if you actually think about it, when they fired Bo Pelini, where have they gone since they fired him?
Nowhere. This was their first year they went to a bowl game.
Yeah, yeah.
They celebrated that bowl game like they won a national championship. That's how starving that fan base
Mm-hmm.
is. Um, yeah, interesting. Okay. Uh, let me ask you this question then. And I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on here with me. I got a couple more questions for you.
All right.
So since we were talking Nebraska, we were talking Oregon, we're talking those Big Ten teams. Which team outside of the Big Ten do you love to hate the most?
That's a toss up between Georgia and Clemson.
Oh, okay.
Because Georgia just something about Georgia, the way they knocked out Marvin Harrison, that kind of made me really uh, dislike Georgia. And I used to kind of be a little big on. I used to not mind to see Georgia win, because they always had some great players come out of there. But ever since they took out Marvin Harrison Jr., it's just that one team that I can't stand. I can't stand Kirby Smart. Not a huge Kirby Smart fan, but I think it's more so Clemson because I can't stand Dabo Sweeney. He just rubs me the wrong way, and those Clemson players that year where we got hosed and lost to them, where they Trevor Lawrence wasn't ducked his head, caused one of our players. I think it was Sean Wade to get
Hmm.
ejected early in that game. Was really the turning point defensively for their offense to explode against us. Was when Wade was out of the game, and they just always have rubbed me. Clemson's always rubbed me the wrong way since Dabo Sweeney's been there. Um, they purposely hurt Braxton Miller. If you go back and look that was a cheap shot on Braxton Miller. They knocked Braxton Miller out of the game and messed his shoulder up. That was a cheap shot. Should have been rough in the passer. Wasn't called. Um, Dabo, I think, is always out to try to not know if they want to say it, hurt people, but try to eliminate the teams almost like he's like a headhunter, like kind of like what Gary Williams was it Greg Williams was back in the day for the Saints, where here's some extra money or here's
Yeah.
motivation for you to go out and take somebody out. Um, I just can't stand Davos Sweeney. I think he talks a lot of smack, and so yeah, I'd probably Georgia and Clemson, but probably more so Clemson if I had to pick one.
The Big Ten's going to announce that they're bringing on two more teams into the conference. Which two teams would you like to see them bring on?
West Virginia and Notre Dame.
Interesting. I get the Notre Dame, but why West Virginia?
I just think with West Virginia because you think about it, they sometimes it's competitive with it would be another rival for Penn State.
Hmm.
Penn State and West Virginia they do not
Be a
like each other.
rivalry for us, man. It's not that
Yes. Oh yeah.
Morgantown. It's
Yeah.
not far
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
Columbus.
And that was my next point. It's like when you look at a lot of times when Ohio State would play West Virginia in basketball, it's always close, nip and tuck. I always thought West Virginia would be a good fit in the Big Ten, and I was kind of hoping when they left, when the Big East fell apart, they would have snatched West Virginia then. Um, but I always just thought West Virginia, and I would love to see Notre Dame in here. They have a lot of rivalries within the Big Ten alone. They have how it's become a rival with Ohio State, of course, TTUN, Sparty.
Hmm.
Um, And
Purdue is actually the school that
oh
they've
yeah, and
played the
Purdue, yeah,
most in the Big Ten is
yeah,
Purdue,
yeah,
believe it or
yeah.
not.
So I would like to see those two teams. I
I
think that would be
think,
great.
if I'm not mistaken, East or if I'm not mistaken, South Bend and West Lafayette are literally only like an hour and
I
10
think,
minutes
I think
apart.
yeah, I think they are. Yeah.
It's really close.
So
Um, what do you think of Marcus Freeman since we're talking Notre Dame?
I think he's a great coach. Um, he kind of rubs me the wrong way because he acts like the way he talks about Ohio State now, like he wishes he wouldn't have gone there. It's like I don't know if he was like a chip on his shoulder. He felt like he never got a fair shot to start, or if he just something rubbed him the wrong way about Ohio State. I don't know what it was playing time there or after he became a coach at, through the coaching ranks. I don't know if he felt like he disrespected it. He never got hired at Ohio State for whatever at any position, but he just kind of not to take what he's. I think he's a great coach. I think what he did at Cincinnati. It was Cincinnati. He was at Cincinnati for a
Yeah,
while.
he was
Then
with
went to
Luke
Notre
Fickle.
Dame.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a great coach. I think he's proven he's a good coach. He could take a good program like Notre Dame and make him a winning thing. But as a Buckeye fan, he just rubbed me the wrong way about how much he just talks and hates on Ohio State. And I'd like to know why he feels that way. I love to sit down and just ask him that question. Somebody ask him the question, what is it you hate about Ohio State? Because I don't think he's ever given a reason.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, you again, you sound a lot like Chris on this one. Chris can't stand the man. He cannot he cannot stand him, and I've looked past some of the comments a little bit because
Well, I mean, I liked him
I
as
think
a
it's
player. If you go back,
grandstanding. Yeah, he
I
was a
think if you go
great
back and
player.
watch him as a player, he was a great player. I just think I don't know
Hmm.
if it was he just felt like he was disrespected
I think
by
it's
Ohio
just
State in some
grandstanding. I think he's just playing into the Notre Dame fan base. He knows they don't like Ohio State fans. He's trying to build this, reputation as their coach, and he just kind of feeding into the narrative that they want. That's my thinking. But um, I think if Ohio State needed a head coach, I think, and he had the opportunity to come back to Columbus, all things equal, I think he would rather coach Ohio State than he would Notre Dame.
I think he would probably have a better chance of coming back than Luke Fickle.
I agree with that comment, Rick. I think Luke Fickle's losing a lot of the shine
Well,
that
not
was
just
on him.
that, just not just that. I think he felt like he deserved another shot after 2000. I think he felt like he deserved a shot in 2012. I think he's still hurt that he
Oh,
wasn't considered for the head
I
coaching job.
I know he did for a fact, Brian. I
Yeah,
know when Urban stepped down and Gene never picked up the phone and
to
even
call Luke Fickle.
called Luke, that that upset Luke a lot because Luke was told by Urban and Gene that he needed head coaching experience. That's the whole reason why he went to Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
So I know
Yeah.
that for a fact. Anyways, interesting. Yeah, that's a good on you, man. All right, last question, Brian. I really appreciate you jumping on here with me. This has been a lot of
Oh,
fun
thank you.
interviewing you,
It's
man.
been fun. It's been fun. It's been great.
Um, what does it mean to Brian Oberst to be a Buckeye?
I don't know. It's just I love it. I guess it's what's was I love it. I've always enjoyed it. I just feel like it's just a great team to root for. I mean, maybe that's just me being biased, being from Ohio, but I just feel like they always have, even though they may not win the games we think they should win. You always see the passion and the fire that they play with. They always have, you know, I don't know, just see all the great players that have come from Ohio State. Just makes me grow to love it, and I enjoy watching all the former Buckeye players play in the NFL and see them do well and success. So I think it's just always been just a love and passion that I just got from watching it with my dad. Talking about that earlier. Just seeing how excited he was to watch Ohio State play, whether they had a good season or a bad season. Just the fact that I got to enjoy it with him and see his passion and love for the game.
Yeah. Brian, is there anything on social media, anything you do and you want to shout out and tell everybody about?
I have my own YouTube channel where I talk sports every once in a while. I'm trying to get more involved in talking sports a little bit, but I also do devotionals where I try to uplift and encourage people that may be searching for something in life, and just kind of like what the Buckeye players did. And they kind of inspired me a little bit more to get out and do that a little bit more. And actually, I started doing that a little bit more 3 years ago when I was dealing with my son who had leukemia and had to get a bone marrow transplant. That was my kind of my outlet to kind of let people know that even through my struggles, that God is always there for me, and He will be there for you if you ever need Him or need to search Him. So check out my channel. I mean, it has sports content and where I talk about God and my faith.
Excellent, dude. And I really do enjoy that, and I appreciate that so much, Brian. And I've tried to catch those when you bring them out, make comments, and be supportive of you like you've been supportive of
I
me
appreciate that.
and
I
this
appreciate
channel.
that. I
Yeah.
appreciate
So
that.
so go check that out, everybody. Thank you so much, Brian, for coming on here, man. It's been a ton of fun
Yes, it has. Thank
getting.
you very much. Thank you very much.
Be kind to one another. I was someone's OH and Carmen High with all your heart. Till next time, you guys know what to do. Brian, I know you know what to
I
do.
know.
OH.
I know.